You know the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about women talking. What is it? Real quick, you can't talk about women talking without talking about sexual assault, so content warning. Women Talking is a drama about a group of women living in an isolated, ultra-conservative Mennonite community who come together to discuss what to do, if anything, in the wake of attacks against several of them. These attacks include being subdued with cow tranquilizer and then raped while unconscious. Really, really horrible stuff. These discussions involve three options: do nothing, stay and fight, or leave the colony. Even though none of them have ever left the colony, they don't really have any sense at all of what's outside the colony, and none of them can read or write. This is based on a 2018 novel by Miriam Toews, which itself was an imagined response to real events. These events took place at a Mennonite community in Bolivia in the mid-2000s. So the assaults were real. The conversations about what to do about the assaults were fictionalized. Who is it made by? It was written and directed by Sarah Polley, who, before she became an acclaimed director and Oscar-nominated screenwriter, she was an actress. So you may recognize her from things like Go, Dawn of the Dead, and Mr. Nobody. Or maybe you've seen her other directorial efforts, including Away from Her and Take This Waltz. This is her first narrative feature in 11 years, because, it's tough to get movies made nowadays. And this got made, at least in part, because Franny McDormand came on as a producer, and she's got pull. How has it been received? Box office-wise, it was almost completely ignored. It's grossed $7 million worldwide, but it's got pretty positive reviews from critics. Oscar-wise, in addition to Best Picture, it's nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and it's the current odds-on favorite to win that. Notably, this is largely understood to be like a fringe Best Picture nominee. Before nominations were announced, 7 or 8 of the 10 slots were pretty set in stone, and Women Talking and Triangle of Sadness filled in the last couple of spots at the expense of things like RRR, The Whale, Glass Onion, Babylon, The Woman King, etc. Who would like this? People who appreciate great acting. Jessie Buckley and Claire Foy in particular are really throwing fastballs here. First wave feminists, maybe? Or, subsequent waves too. This is technically a modern story, but takes place in a community that has purposefully rejected modernity. So it's interesting to see these women effectively fight battles that much of the rest of the world fought 100 years ago, 150 years ago even. Fans of talky didactic shit, or so you would think. I consider myself a fan of talky didactic shit, and this didn't really do it for me. More in part 2. You know the Best Picture nominees, so let's talk about Women Talking. I didn't love this, and I think I wanted to like this more than I actually did. I heard writer-director Sarah Polley say in an interview that she was very intentional about trying to keep this movie around 100 minutes because she knew that the audience wouldn't have a ton of patience for this kind of movie, very dialogue-driven, kind of philosophical, and about upsetting subject matter. I appreciate her instinct to get in and get out quickly, but maybe for me, she overcorrected a bit because I was left wanting more. I think the real problem I had was the scope. There's an axiom of screenwriting to start as late as possible and end as early as possible. And that goes for individual scenes, but also kind of goes for your story as a whole. Basically, only tell the parts of the story that you absolutely need to. And if you don't need something, cut it. That's the idea behind the axiom. So Sarah Polley is telling the story she wants to tell and focusing on the parts that she wants to focus on. That's absolutely her right as the storyteller. But I guess I just wanted a different story scope than what this movie ended up being. Start late, end early, yes, but I think she ended too early. This feels like a first act. The real meat of the drama is happening outside the scope of the movie. The movie ends when, I think, the interesting part is just beginning. The end of the movie feels like what should be the break into 2, the end of the first act and start of the second act. And the movie's limited scope isn't just in regard to the narrative, the visuals have very limited scope too. The vast majority of the movie takes place in a barn where the titular women do the titular talking, and I learned afterwards they're on a soundstage. And the light coming through the cracks in the barn and the expanse visible out the open door and the open window, that's all green screen. And I don't know, I just didn't think it looked very good. To be fair, I'm sure budget was limited too, but it is what it is. I just didn't think it looked very good. I've heard comparisons to 12 Angry Men, and I certainly see the comparison. It's a group of people with differing points of view, debating a course of action in a singular location. But 12 Angry Men had defined consequences and immediate consequences. The debate at the center of Women Talking has nebulous consequences. And not to spoil anything, they are frustratingly consequences we never see. I didn't dislike it. And it's not even that I don't recommend it necessarily. I just wanted more.